non-disabled, honorary freeman of the Shire. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures, and to elders both past and present. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Jackson, who's unable to make it here today. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Mr. President. I request a leave of absence from all council-related business for the period between 8th August to 13th September 2020.
Thank you. No others? Can we have someone move? That's Councillor Caboni, second Councillor Burgoyne. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Simpson.
I've taken today's reading from this quote from some people who said, "Action is a great restorer and builder of confidence. Inaction is not only the result, but the cause of failure. Perhaps the action you take will be successful. Perhaps different action or adjustments will have to follow. But any action is better than no action at all."
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. Councillor Caboni.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll declare a financial interest in the sustainable development item. The first one, item 12.3.1, the extractive industry. I am the applicant and represent the Giarchi family and the 300 people we employ in this matter, and I'll leave the chambers for that item.
Thank you. Councillor Burgoyne.
Mr. President, declare financial interest in the same item, 12.3.1. In fact, my employer is involved with extractive industry losses, so the financial interest in the chambers. Also, declaring partiality in 12.3.2. The applicant is a person who applies to the state chambers.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Declaring partiality interest in item 12.2.1, which is regarding the realignment of the board and promenade. My employer is located at that address and will make the exception of partiality for the same times.
Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to declare partiality for 12.3.3, request for exemptions related to compliant owners of adjoining property, and also partiality for 12.5.2, proposed local tourism development strategy, and 12.5.4, tourism information as Shire representative for the state terms.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I declare partiality interest with regard to item 12.3.1. I disclose that my son-in-law, who does not reside with me, is an employee with MG involved as a truck driver. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality in this matter may be affected. I declare that I will remain in the chamber, consider and vote accordingly on this matter based on its merits. I also declare impartiality interest with regard to item 12.5.3, the youth strategy. I disclose that I am the current chairperson and council delegate of October Youth. I will remain in chambers and consider and vote accordingly on this matter based on its merits.
Councillor Bromman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I declare partially acting interest in 12.5.3 for the youth strategy and to a delegate on the Lot 2A.
Thank you, councillors. No other interests? Item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, Public question time. Mrs. Susan Sloan, would you like to come and ask your question first? Okay. Councillor Caboni and Councillor Burgon, would you please leave the chambers? Thank you.
I note from the question posed to Mr. Hall at the agenda briefing on the 18th of August that 10 limestone extraction quarries are in operation in the Shire of Harvey at the moment. However, does GMG Archer Family Trust run any other limestone extraction and crushing operations in the Shire of Harvey in the path of prevailing easterly winds, blowing towards and 680 metres from multiple homes? If so, have there been any complaints to council about that or those quarries?
Mr. Hall.
Through Mr. Chairman. Look, MGMs do operate another limestone pit within our shire. It's a little bit further north than the current one, off Taranto Road, and it doesn't actually, or it's not actually located in any of those criteria in terms of the prevailing easterly winds towards a number of houses that you referred to. And as far as complaints with regard to that property or any others, there's none with that.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Debbie Buchanan. Debbie here? Okay, well, I'm happy to read the question out if everyone wants to go and sit through that. Main Roads have stated that they have no objections. Is there a response to the proposed 8 trucks per day or for the unspecified increase in the number of trucks it takes to meet demand? Mr. Hall, is that one for you?
There's a second part to that, which is more important.
Oh, sorry. I'll keep going. You're welcome. At what point do Main Roads need to be consulted with an increase of more than the 8 trucks per day?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Main Roads provided exactly the same application as everybody else, and they had actually very few comments. They were definitely very supportive of the proposal. And look, if there is a significant change in the amount of truck movements that are proposed in this application, at any point in time, Shire staff can engage with Main Roads and request a traffic management plan.
Question 3. Can we read the private agreement between the proponents of the limestone quarry and the Rogers family? If not, can the council request it through freedom of information and provide it to the ratepayers?
Through you again, Mr. Chairman. The Shire is privileged to that private agreement. It's exactly that. It is private between 2 private individuals. As far as freedom of information is concerned, given the fact that the Shire is actually not a party to it, it's not a public document, so our understanding is the FRI request. It would need to have that government involvement, so there isn't an opportunity to obtain that document under FRI.
Carol, would you like to ask your questions?
It's got partial. Good afternoon, Paul. I'm back. My question is to Simon with regards to the state government's commitment to increasing use of the recycled materials to support the objectives of material recovery, targets of WA. The waste avoidance and resource recovery strategy in 2030. So transport infrastructure projects provide the opportunity for state governments to use significant quantities of recycled products. My question to Simon is the Shire of Harvey, has the Shire of Harvey requested Mr. Giacchi source a percentage of his road-based recycled rubber material the Sandy Road Waste Management Facility. Do you want me to keep the other questions as well? All right.
Yeah, through the chair, research on recycled materials. We at Shire don't really use a lot. We've got quarry pits up at the Scarlet and other resources nearby. But the Waste Authority has a program called Roads to Reuse, and that's been bubbling away in terms of doing trials and whatnot. And many roads through that program have committed to using 100,000 tonnes of recycled materials per annum. And that's sort of mainly around the metropolitan area, where some of the materials are further away from the source. They generally spread up there, it's mainly limestone. And just doing a calculation on the wall project, will be looking at something between 750,000 to 1 million tonne of material. So the main road is 100,000 tonne, obviously isn't going a long way in terms of the wall project. But look, it's something that I know main roads are aware of and has been discussed when we discussed the wall project with them.
Yeah, Minister Dawson has stated that the wall will be using 30% of the road base coming from the use of rubber. My next question, does the Shire have a policy for contractors use recycled waste as part of the Shire's tendering process for local roads and pathways and bridges? This would reduce the number of extracted proposals the Shire deals with and we deal with, and take the pressure off the communities of any other environment.
Through you, Chair. Carol, yes, the Shire does actually have sustainable buildings material and construction policy. It's only a recent policy. It's fair to say that we're still educating the contractors, the builders out there on how to engage more readily with us to actually use alternative solutions for raw and new materials. So yes, we do have that policy, and it's something that we are continuing to try and improve.
Are there any hindrances to that? So if you could explain if there's any obstacles for local governments that impede this process and the delivery of the government's objectives. Are you aware of any when it comes to main roads and their actual requirements?
Through Mr. Chair, the question sort of crosses over quite a number of us. In terms of obstacles, in terms of implementing the sustainability policy of council, it's industry engagement more so than anything, and industry engagement plus also industry obligations with regard to the standard and specs that building code requires or even road construction material requires as well. So obviously there is a requirement in terms of there is requirements in terms of the road-based materials that are used, and the use of recycled materials introduces impediments to that actually coming up with the specs. So it's an industry awareness application that we're actually hoping to, over time, sort of get to a much better place than we're going
It was a project that I'm working on with the Conservation Council, so you're listening to it really well, but we are encouraging. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Vanessa Spencer.
Good afternoon. I actually have a few questions. Sorry, I didn't realise I had to read them. So I'll start with I'm not a public speaker, but I'll see how it goes. Okay, so I wanted to submit these questions with regards to various issues, and the first one is, the Local Government Act 1995 states that the role of the council is to represent the interests of electors, ratepayers and residents of the district. The Shire of Harvey's website states the role of the council includes making wise decisions in the interest of the community and to represent the community. Can you please advise how a limestone extraction bit will benefit the Shire of Harvey and the town of Ingham?
role of the administration, the second is the role of council, and the third is their direct benefit to the Shire or residents of Bingham. As far as the role of the administration is concerned, we are required to provide a very impartial report to council that is governed by all our statutory framework and legislation. So that's the role of the administration, to provide that very unbiased report. It's the role of the council to make a decision within exactly the same framework that we've got. And if they choose to depart from that, they still need to exercise proper normal planning and make sure that they still adhere to that statutory framework. As far as the direct benefit, the Shire of Harvey actually has no real direct benefit from this law. We're really a decision maker on an application to proceed. And to take that further, you could conclude that Bingham Town site is a beneficiary of this as well.
Okay, so I'm going to move to question 2, which is there's no mention under item 5.8 heritage sites in the proposed extractive industry lot 4 within upper media document regarding Springhill Homestead and Cemetery, despite 98 Springhill Road being detailed on the register of National Estate and National Trust of Australia, WA, and the Shire of Harvey Heritage List under District Planning Set number 1. The two-storey building is believed to have been built from bricks brought out from England as ballast and common ships about 1880, and the smallest stone building constructed about 1862. Springhill Homestead is a place associated with the first settlers, 1840 to 1890 period of development, and people who settled in the area. Based on its social connections, rarity, integrity, authenticity, and physical condition to the area, it is significant to the development of the Parkville locality. As such, it is recorded in the Shire of Harvey Municipal Inventory of Heritage Places Review of 2013 as a place of historic value, research value, and social value, with the conservation of the place being highly desirable. Given Springhill Homestead's significance and noting its close proximity to the proposed site, what conditions, if any, are to be applied to ensure the homestead and cemetery will be protected from damage and that works will be undertaken in accordance with all legislative requirements?
Again, through you, Mr. Chairman. Correct description of this measure of the property. It is actually a highly significant local building. It is actually on the Shire's MHI, or Municipal Heritage Inventory, as a Category 2 property. There are 4 categories. It's not the highest category that we have assigned to this particular property. It isn't on the State Heritage Register. It is, as you mentioned, on the Register of National Estates, which is purely a guidance document. It again doesn't have any statutory authority. Because it's not on the State Heritage Register, the application isn't required to be. It cannot be referred to the State Heritage. They have no role to play. If it was, as an adjoining property, it would have gone to them. The other thing is that it is on an adjoining, it's on an adjoining property. So a condition of approval can't be imposed outside of the property on which the application actually relates to. Unless all parties agree to that, you can have conditions that are outside of the norm. And in this particular case, the proponent has actually agreed with that adjoining landowner to come up with that condition report that was referred to previously. So that condition report addresses as much as the Shire can actually ask for in regards to protection and ongoing preservation of that property.
Okay, well the property is in very close proximity to the proposed site though. And that takes me to my question with regards to the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999, which provides a legal framework to protect and manage nationally significant fauna, flora, habitats and places including national heritage places. The Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act requires landowners, developers, companies, individuals and governments to seek Australian government approval in addition to state, territorial or local government approvals if plans may impact on matters of nationally significance including national heritage places. Has approval been granted for the proposed limestone pit in accordance with the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act requirements?
Through Mr. Chair, look, it hasn't, and it's not required to, and it can't actually be referred to on the EPBC Act. The reason for that is that the reference that you made to the excuse me, Register of National Estate and National Trust, in roughly 2007, that register, the National Register, the Estate Register, was actually ceased. It was removed from being an operational document. And in 2012, all reference to it was actually removed from the EPBC Act. So there's no link from that register into the EPBC Act with regard to calling in a property on that register. The frustrating and very annoying part of it is if it was, the local government, any local government can't refer a proposal for consideration under the EPBC Act. We're not a referring authority. It comes down to, you listed off quite rightly, landowners, developers, companies, and individuals. They have to make their own self-assessment and voluntarily refer it under the EPBC Act. In this case, they're not statutorily obligated to do so. So it hasn't been on there, and there is no mechanism for the EPBC Act to have any control input in the determination of this application.
Is it not under the Environmental Protection Act, though, not the Conservation registered as a place of sensitivity? Just my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer though, so I just had a look at the acts. And my interpretation was that even though it's not the World Register or the other one, it's still a national significance register, puts it in a place of sensitivity, and which what my understanding was covered.
Okay, so you flipped across from the EPBC Act and the EP Act, which introduces environmental sensitive areas. So this whole Swan Coastal Plain is pretty much an environmental sensitive area, and there are triggers that require referral under that legislation to have a look at, not the conservation matters, the other legislation, the EPA legislation. So the EPA legislation would be triggered if there was land clearing, and there's not. If there was land clearing, there's no native vegetation there. It would also be triggered if there was, if the separation distances weren't being achieved. Yes, the Rogers ones don't achieve that separation distances, but in this particular case, they are a supporting component to this application, so that isn't actually something that will trigger it going further as well. If there was groundwater penetration, or if they were actually within 30 metres of the Snow Conservation Resource Enhancement Wetland nearby, you would then start to trigger the requirement for an NPA referral. None of those triggers have been triggered, and hence there's been no referral to the NPA.
So as a council, aren't you still under a duty to protect people and property within that area? I know Rogers are quite happy to have people edge, but does the council not still have a liability or to protect that because it is within the recommended 500 metres under the Environmental Protection Act?
Mr. Chairman, we're starting to almost get into a debate. So
sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
As a point of clarification, yes, look, we've always said, well, I've always said that it's capable of being improved, and the off-site impacts are those that can be mitigated by management plans. So that is the obligation of the local authority to ensure that they feel comfortable with the management plans in obtaining or adhering to their obligations.
So I wanted to ask about when making the determination information, what consideration was given to the likely detrimental impact on tourism and tourism income to the community?
Through Mr. Chairman, there were some comments in the submissions table that yes, we did take into account that there are tourism operations within the shire. And the determination was that they are like any other sensitive receptor. So if someone is visiting the town for short stay purposes for a holiday, they have just as much right to be protected as much as someone that's living there permanently. So the environmental receptor and separation distances was considered exactly the same for a tourism, someone visiting the town for tourism purposes. As far as impact on the tourism industry and businesses, it's something that I must say it wasn't something that was explicitly considered as part of the assessment.
Okay, because under the council agenda, it details that the officers consider the proposal is unlikely to have a significant detrimental impact on the community, but I consider this tourism issue was actually the detrimental impact. Will activities be suspended if they appear to be impacting on surrounding environment, fauna and flora?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'm going to come back to those management plans. If they're in breach of any of the management plans and we're seeing adverse impacts on the ground, then yes, the shire, as they are conditions to approve, the shire does have the ability to step in and suspend operations until such time as all the activity is occurring, has been rectified.
And will the monitoring of the silica in the air be done with external parties, or is that the responsibilities of MGM, given that you don't actually see it as dust when it's in the air because each grain is 100 times smaller than a grain of sand, so it's generally not visible. So if you're looking at the dust in the air, you won't be aware that you're actually in an environmentally polluted condition.
Through Mr. Chair, that question is probably best asked the applicant, but the NGMs are the ones taking it out of the ground and not actually specialists with regard to that type of monitoring, and I would anticipate, and their management plan from memory actually clearly says that they will engage appropriately qualified consultants to undertake that monitoring.
Okay, and what recourse will be available to the community of Binningham and for the Shire of Harvey? The limestone quarry does result in on-site impact. I know you're not really concerned about that, but if it should eventuate, is there any recourse to the community or the Shire?
Through Mr. Chair, look, again, if there's continued breaches of any management or bad practices in place, the most obvious recourse for the Shire is actually to seek prosecution, and I think the Shire has proven itself many, many times that prosecution of extractive industries is something that we're not able to do, so yes, the extent.
And my last question relates to the visual impact. The report provided, that was by Mitigation provided and procured and probably paid by MGM, states that there's going to be very low visual impact. But I walk that golf course every day, and on the golf course you can see right across the plain, and you can see the whole area where the people be. The photos provided showing that the natural bush would provide screening is quite ludicrous because the photo is taken down the road of Lakes Parade, the site's that way. And yes, when you look that way, there is bush along the side of Lakes Parade, but if you face that way, there's actually big gaps between the bush, and you can see quite a lot. And you do have actually quite good visibility, which concerned me because I felt the photos were rather misleading. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I just thought it was a bit strange, so I'm concerned with regards to the visual impact. I consider will be rather great, and I was wondering if the councillors had actually been to the site, walked on the golf course, and to you.
Happy to answer that, Mr. Hall. Yeah, speaking to most councillors, most have taken the time to go out to Binningham and inspect it and actually drive up Spring Hill Road and have a look for themselves, which I think is, given the nature this proposal. I think it was incumbent that they do that.
Yes, the view from the golf course is magnificent, and it's enjoyed by not just residents, it's enjoyed by tourists, and it's enjoyed by people that actually come just to walk the golf course with their dogs or by themselves, because it's all you hear is the ocean, the birds, and the views of the beautiful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Vanessa. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon to you. My name is Ian Hill. I'm an anaesthetic technician at the St John Hospital in Bunbury. It's just a quick question, really. Due to the extremely close proximity of the limestone quarry, are there any contingency plans in place with regards to medical insurance? If, to say, in 5 years' time, some residents of Binningham fall ill with a silica-related disease, silicosis, how will we be protected? Are you willing to take that risk?
I've answered mine, Mr. Hall.
Three, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hill, pretty question. Look, as far as the issue of silicosis is concerned, being very honest, I don't think there are any of us in this room, possibly aside myself, that actually understands the potential impact that that might have. All we can rely upon at the moment is that the current level of information that we have in regard to silicosis is being appropriately understood and hopefully managed in those plans that have been required. Beyond that, I can't provide myself or anybody else or even council the comfort that going forward we have this issue 100% understood and the management plan.
So you say 100% understanding the issues of silica and silicosis. Is that what you're trying to say?
What I'm trying to tell you is that the issue of silicosis is still being investigated.
It very much is. The government have got a team, a dust team. $5 million have been spent on that dust team, a dust monitoring team. I got on the phone just yesterday to a young lady in the asbestos society that are now very much concentrating on silica. So silica is the new asbestos. Now, you just can't poo-poo this. Now, you can't take the risk. Are you prepared to take the risk? Because if you are prepared to take the risk, I'm not prepared to take that risk. Yeah. And I know the community of Binningham are not prepared to take that risk. So I'm going to ask you, do you want that on your doorstep?
Thank you, but I think Simon's answered the question, and we are well aware of the silica dust that has been forefront in the decision that probably will be made later on. Thank you. Dare I say, are there any more questions before we move on to yes?
Good afternoon. During last week's briefing meeting, Councillor Harvey stated his conflict of interest and left the room prior to the discussions regarding the proposed project. Following the deputations and council discussions, Councillor Harvey re-entered the room, stated he'd been watching the proceedings via Zoom. This can be referenced by watching the Zoom meeting from 2 hours and 7 minutes onwards. Additionally, he proceeded to comment on the proceedings, and these comments are influence to the council. Could you please explain the rationale for requiring councillors to declare their conflict of interest and leave chambers? And additionally, what are the repercussions for a council who willfully chooses to flout these rules by listening to proceedings, in this case, the PSC? This video is on YouTube. It's been reposted several times, but from 2 hours, 7 minutes onwards, I believe at 2 hours at 9 minutes, the meeting was closed. It was the last discussion within the council at that time.
Yep. Look, we're aware, and it was evident that those comments were made and it was recorded. The deputations are public, and councillors have to abide by their oath of office in regards to the way that they conduct themselves. There has been a declaration of interest, but there is nothing in the Act that says that a councillor can't view that public information, but they're not allowed to use that information to influence a decision.
So, can you please explain why councillors leave the room once their conflict of interest is declared? And is that breaking this oath you're speaking of?
The conduct of a councillor is incumbent on the individual. The councillors leave the room as part of the deputations and public question time, so that there's not any undue influence during those deputations or public questions, and they're required to leave the council chamber during the decision-making process so that they're not involved in that decision or through undue influence. So that's the reason that they leave the chamber.
And the comments by Councillor Compulsory at the end of last week's meeting, as referenced on Zoom, was that not an example of undue influence?
I can't comment in regards to whether that has had any impact on councillors and their decision-making process, because that's an individual assessment by each individual councillor.
If it were seen to be undue influence, what would be the repercussions for council?
No.
Okay. And are we also ensuring that currently people who have left the room declaring conflicts of interest are not given the chance?
No.
Thank you.
Another question, sir.
I just have a follow-up with regards to that question. Given that we became as a community aware of that particular instance occurring due to, I can only assume Councillor Carboni believing that there wasn't a hot mic as such, and it was the last minute or so of the meeting. And given previous comments, which were publicised in the Harvey Reporter, which I'm sure you're all aware of, Councillor has made, those are recorded elements that the community is aware of. I think I would speak for everyone here that there are incredible concerns about what hasn't been recorded and what potentially has been said at other times in other conversations causing undue influence. Given we've now seen 2 occurrences, it's a great concern that this whole process is potentially tainted. In the event that somebody will come to light down the track that there have been any other conversations that haven't slipped through, that haven't been accidentally recorded, what recourse do the community of Binningup have with regards to every single person on this council and their impartiality, and in the event, say for example, of a silicone outbreak or something like that, I would have thought there'd be potential liability, because right now, given those 2 instances, you are knowingly going into making a decision which we are aware of has been unduly influenced. And with regard to that, given that it's been unduly influenced, I think an independent investigation into the handling of this application and the actions of the council would be paramount prior to making any decision, to ensure that any decision is made in a fair and consistent manner with the oaths that you swear.
Thank you. I'll actually stake my reputation on any decision that I make on any council that I've previously been on or am on now. No councillor here has flagged with me any undue influence from either party that have left the room tonight with a conflict of interest. And I think that I would stand here and say that the integrity of all of this council will be upheld and has been upheld. This has not been an easy decision for either staff or for council to go through. This proponent brought this to the table back in March, and I think we're up to item 6 of going to and fro. But every council, and it is our duty of care, not only to our community, but to ourselves, that the decision that we make, not only today, but on our length on council, has everything that we wish to tick off morally, ethically, and in the best interest going forward. So you have my word that there has been no undue influence at all.
This is to you all individually, I hope. Do you all feel comfortable sitting on a council where one of your co-councillors is prepared to show such disregard for the oath that you swore, and if integrity is of such value, consistently in regards within a decision-making process? Because I know if I was a councillor and I held myself to a high standard of integrity, those 2 instances of behaviour would have been enough to say that's not acceptable in any way, shape or form on a council with which I sit.
As all councillors here today, and no matter where they sit in the state, are bound under legislation through the Local Government Act. And it is upon the councillors themselves to adhere to that. As the old saying is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So if people wish to go outside of that act, then they suffer the consequences accordingly. Thank you. We all happy to move on to deputations? Okay. Margaret Brox, would you like to go first?
Thank Council for the opportunity to speak. I would also like to mention that due to a whiplash injury, periodically I lose my voice. So if this happens, I'm prepared to 10 slides and my notes, and I've asked Professor Samuel to take over the slides and read my notes on my behalf. So my name is Dr. Margaret Brox, and I'm an adjunct associate professor in environmental and conservation sciences at Murdoch University. Both my honours degree and my PhD are in the discipline of geoheritage. Just like Professor Samuel, I'm recognised as a geoheritage specialist. Some of my affiliations are listed below. I'm the member for Oceania of the International Union for Conservation of Nature Geospecialist Group. For the Geological Society of Australia, I'm both the national and the WA division convener for geological heritage, and I'm the continental coordinator for the International Association for Ocean Geology. As the continental coordinator for the International Association for Geoethics, I speak to the ethical, social and cultural implications of geoscience knowledge in education, research, practice and communication, in providing a point of intersection for geosciences, sociology, philosophy and economy. I'm not being paid by any group to attend today. I'm here today because it is the role of my unpaid affiliations to provide advice on evidence-based geoheritage values and to promote geoethics.
I do have other affiliations, as founding and ongoing executive membership of the Wetlands Research Association and Geoheritage Australasia. Slide 2, please. Okay. I have over 30 publications that I have authored and co-authored in the discipline of geoheritage, including this publication titled Geoheritage from Global Perspectives to Local Principles for Planning and Management, published in 2008 by the WA Museum and sold in WA Museum bookshops. Slide 3. The Yarra Plain and why I'm here. These are some photographs taken last week. The land adjacent to the proposed quarry has limestone cropping out at the surface and clearly is also a wetland. Slide 4, please. Here I've made a preliminary list of stakeholders. I'm not here to represent any of the stakeholders listed. I am to speak to the geoheritage significance of the Yarra Plain and why, given the high conservation values that will be adversely impacted by the proposed quarrying is not an appropriate development or land use at this location. Slide 5, please. The VNC Samuel Group was commissioned to write a report on the natural values of the Yarra Plain by the then DEC in 2009. There are also publications in 1996 as well as 2001. The comprehensive geoheritage and wetland values are well described in these publications in great detail. Slide 6, please. In geological terms, the Yarra Plain is underlain by limestone and is part of the northern strand of Leschenault Inlet. Over time, the northern end of the Leschenault Inlet has filled with mud so that the Yarra Plain has somewhat separated or stranded from the Leschenault Inlet. It is the perfect sequence or record of the natural history of the Yarra Plain. There is evidence of changes in sea level, the marine and terrestrial environment and its biodiversity over 4 glacial and interglacial periods from millions of years ago until today. This makes this area so geologically and hydrologically complex, and why the Yarra Plain is so unique. I'm not going into detail in this diagram as part of the report by Professor Samuel, and I've circled on the far right, which is the present, where the proposed quarry will sit and how it will impact on the geoheritage values of the Yarra Plain. Slide 7, please. At another level of detail, the study of the stratigraphy or the order and relative position of past and present landforms had revealed not one, but 5 different limestones and quartz sand. Next slide, please. These geological features and the accompanying complex hydrology are what makes the Yarra Plain area and surrounding region geologically significant for a range of natural history features ranging from earth science features to ecosystem features to biodiversity aspects. Slide 1, please. This slide summarises the adverse environmental impacts that the proposed quarry will have on the natural values not only of the quarry area but on the Yarra Plain as a unit of geoheritage significance. Slide 10, please. This information is from the Shire of Harvey website on Heritage Guidelines. These guidelines are founded on international conventions and the bilateral agreement between the Commonwealth and the states and territories to identify and protect sites of natural heritage. Under geological World Heritage criteria, The Yalgara Plain is a page in the geo-archive of the history of the Earth. It demonstrates globally unique products of active and past processes that include coastal and marine processes. Under Australian heritage criteria, the Yalgara Plain has outstanding heritage value to the nation because of the place's importance in the course or pattern of Australia's natural history. As I previously stated, the Yalgara Plain area and the surrounding region geologically is significant for a range of natural history features, ranging from earth science features to ecosystem features to biodiversity aspects. The Yalgara Plain thus represents the best preserved sequence of Pleistocene landforms, that's 2.5 million years to 12,000 years ago, derived from coastal sedimentation in Western Australia over 4 glacial and interglacial periods, and the best preserved series of marine prograded like Pleistocene limestone system in Western Australia. In addition, there is no equivalent of the sequence of prograding, which is Cretan limestone, of various Pleistocene ages as manifest on the Yalgara Plain elsewhere in Australia or in fact the world. Last slide, please. I put it to you that under the state and federal guidelines, where natural heritage is a matter of national importance, the values of the Yalgara Plain should be celebrated and conserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Councillor Bromman, did you have a question?
Yes, please. Very interesting presentation. There are several previous, there are several quarries in the Yalgara Plain already.
Yes.
I'm wondering why this hasn't been brought to the attention of Western Australian government and local government prior to this time.
I can't answer that question. I can tell you that a recent review of the EPBC Act has stated that the heritage system is broken and that we don't have a system that was intended to be put in place. The register of the national estate was mentioned earlier, has become not delisted. The intention was to transfer places from the register of the national estate to the National Heritage List over a period of time under the EPBC Act. However, due to a lack of government resources, less than 10% of sites were actually transferred. So, whilst the other developments have gone ahead, we now know that it's not the right thing to do. We now know that this area is particularly special in terms of its heritage values and what it shows. And the decision is based on our knowledge today, not based on we didn't know then, so let's forget it now.
No more questions? Thank you, Margaret, for your presentation. Harvey.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Harvey. I live in Mitigation, and this afternoon is my honour to represent the Mitigation community. Although I will cut it down a bit because there have been some impromptu deputations tonight already that the committee was unaware of, so I'll try and keep it brief. I'd like to begin by providing a brief overview of last week's deputations. You heard from environmentalist Karen Lloyd, who informed you that the site is susceptible to inundation. It's flood prone, which makes it inconsistent with the Shard's 2020 local planning strategy, and this is one of the many reasons that this site is unsuitable. Coastal inundation threatens agricultural land with limiting road access and cannot be avoided or mitigated because the coastal lowland is continuous from the Leschenault estuary to Lake Preston. Currently, the permeable soils of the existing pastures act as a carbon sink and everything is functioning quite well. Limestone extraction will destroy this. Carolyn cautioned that the removal of the sedimentary limestone will disrupt the connectivity of the wetlands, the linkages and ecosystem functions of the entire landscape. In layman's terms, it will become a mosquito field swamp. The applicant says that during extraction, the surface water will be internally drained with holding ponds established. On a floodplain, that's unlikely, although the mosquitoes flood. The best advice we have is that this land could not be returned to functioning pastures. It could not be rehabilitated, and that is not good enough. A further issue highlighted is the potential contamination of the Parkfield drain system. Surface water runoff, stormwater and groundwater from this site will all drain into the underlying soils and travel inevitably into the Parkfield drain, and then into the Leschenault estuary, jeopardising the rich feeding and nesting areas, the migratory and endangered species. The estuary is an important habitat recognised nationally and internationally, and to this end, the Conservation Council of WA, the Leschenault Catchment Council and the Wetlands Conservation Society have combined referred this proposal for review to the Minister for Water, because basically it is the informed opinion of those in the field that extractive industry at this site poses an unacceptable risk to the receiving environment. The Leschenault Catchment Council has suggested that the proposal has not adequately assessed a range of issues and have recommended to us, the community, that the matter be referred to the Minister for the Environment with a request that the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation consider a proper risk-based assessment to determine if this matter should then be referred to the EPA. Environment Minister Dawson is already aware of this proposal since the petition against it was presented in Parliament. The Minister has been contacted by many concerned stakeholders and has confirmed that the proposal has not been referred under the Environmental Protection Act. It's our understanding that DBCA has not been consulted either, and that concerns us and we believe it should concern you. Professors Semenyak and Margaret tonight have explained to us all what geoheritage is and stressed the international significance of this particular site. The geoheritage value of this location is another compelling reason to vote no to this proposal. As you're aware, the community of Binningup, the people who will be most impacted by this proposal, are unitedly, overwhelmingly and passionately opposed to this development, and with a multitude of very good reasons. At its simplest, this application presents a land use conflict. We have absolutely no confidence in the management plans presented by the applicant, and even less confidence that they will be self-managed and adjudicated by the contractor. We have so much to lose and nothing to gain. The overwhelming community opposition to this proposal is based on a series of legitimate concerns that have not, in our opinion, and in some instances simply cannot be adequately mitigated. We implore you as the leaders of our community to make a wise decision. The agenda briefing document reviewed last week appears to accept blindly everything that is purported by the applicant. We do not. For example, the property that's first in the firing line of destruction in Spring Hill Homestead. The applicant would have us believe that their private agreement with the current owners mitigates any concern that any of us may have about just how close that property is to the quarry. It doesn't. The applicant's proposal briefly references the site's Aboriginal heritage, but there's actually more. As you all know now from the email I sent you last week, we had an independent registered heritage architect review this proposal, and his conclusion, as Vanessa quoted earlier, was that based on the site's social connections, rarity, integrity, authenticity and physical condition, it is a place of significance for us all. This is not really news, as Simon acknowledged. It is on the heritage list for the Shire of Harvey District Planning Scheme. It's a place associated with the first settlers. It's on the register of the National Estate and National Trust of Australia. The Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment have also noted its significance, and they do talk about the bricks of the homestead being made from the ballast of farming ships. A private agreement obtained goodness knows how on a piece of blank A4 paper is not good enough. That's not a risk assessment, and to disregard the potential degradation of that specific heritage site is certainly not in the best interests of our Shire. We believe that more should and could be done. Moving beyond the homestead and casting the net of destruction slightly wider, we're concerned about the potential off-site and indirect impacts to fauna through vehicle movements across Lot 4 and 5 and the access to Lot 2. Our community has voiced concerns about the potential impact of roadkill within written submissions to the Shire. And in response, we've been advised that this proposal is unlikely to result in significant impact to wildlife. Unlikely? According to who? Not the Minister for the Environment, because that office has not been consulted by the applicant. Not the EPA, they haven't been consulted either. We have the adjoining properties threatened species such as the western ringtail possum, a species classified as a matter of national environmental significance. Then there's the honeybees, the endangered black cockatoo, the threatened forest red-tailed black and the Borden's cockatoos. The federal government has just granted $3 million to help preserve these species, and the Peel Harvey Catchment Council is one of the 5 recipients of that grant. The funding is to support nesting sites, and these species are right next door to the proposed quarry. They're even closer than we are. The committee have been in discussion with DBCA, who have advised that a road management and monitoring plan must address off-site impacts on flora and fauna. Just saying that a development is unlikely to impact these species without due diligence of seeking any expert advice is again not good enough. We have to the north of us, the north of Lot 4, the Yalgara Conservation Park, and to our south, multiple-use wetlands. There is the potential for this entire stretch to be incorporated into the National Regional Park. With leadership from our Shire and in consultation with DBCA and the landowner, these 2 extremely important conservation areas could be incorporated into an uninterrupted biodiversity trail, but not if there's a mine site in the way. Not only do we risk losing what we have now, but approving this project seriously jeopardises our conservation and geotourism future. On top of the concerns presented at last week's agenda briefing meeting in relation to noise and dust and health issues, etc., we also question how this development will impact the secondary access road into Ginninghup. This is a road that has already been surveyed to navigate the entire wetlands area. It's gone to planning, it's been approved and identified as a priority by the Shire, not only for the South Ginninghup development, but also to ease the issues currently associated with Ginninghup Road and as an escape route in case of fire or flood emergency. That road and this proposal cannot proceed in unison because the road goes straight through the quarry site. So either the community gets the prioritised second access road or the applicant gets their quarry. Or if a new path to circumnavigate the quarry is surveyed and eventually approved, are we to contest with the trucking route onto the highway? Yet another reason this development is entirely unsuitable for this site. Finally, at the agenda briefing meeting, we felt it was inferred that it would be pointless for Council to oppose this application because the applicant would take it to the SAT. And they approved it. Well, we don't accept that. The SAT approving this application is not a fait accompli. And even if that did happen, we would still be proud that our councillors had listened to us and truly represented our community. An entire community that one way or another will be impacted by this development. There are numerous red flags in relation to numerous issues, and in concert, the alarm bells are deafening. Please listen to your community and reject this.
Thanks, Harvey. Is there any questions? Thank you. Gary.
Hello again. Good afternoon, Shire councillors and officers. I'm here once again to speak on behalf of the Mitigation community against this proposal. I want to thank you all firstly for not collectively groaning in displeasure at my appearance once again. I also hope that you'll understand, based on some of the more pointy questions that have been asked tonight and statements made earlier, that the members of our community are somewhat unfamiliar with Shire protocols, and I ask that you give some latitude and consideration to that and appreciate the level of angst in our community and the reasons why that's come about. What I want to do is focus on providing some answers from the community with regards to some of the questions posed by councillors last week. Given the rules around the agenda briefing, we were unable to respond formally, and in the interest of our own transparency, we wanted to provide some information that we hope will be helpful to you when you make your decision about this proposal later this evening. Firstly, I wanted to respond to a question that I believe Councillor Beach asked in relation to whether there had been any dust complaints about the limestone pit already in operation at Lot 305 Spring Hill Road, which is managed by B&J Catalano. The Planning Officer, Mr Hall, responded on behalf of the Shire and stated there had been no complaints. However, through a little bit of our own research, we established that there has been complaints made about dust. In fact, the complaint forms part of the minutes of the Shire's Council meeting of September 2014. The complaint was made by the owners of the commercial market gardening operation to the south of Vinegar and obviously to the south of the Catalano pit. I believe it was Gallardi Brothers. The Catalano pit was originally required to use water trucks on Spring Hill Road in order to keep dust down for trucks carting limestone. As a result of that complaint, a portion of Spring Hill Road was required to be sealed in order to keep dust down. It was also noted in that complaint that should lots 2, 4 and 5, the subject of the proposal, be developed, they would insist on the entirety of Spring Hill Road being sealed, as water trucks would be insufficient to control dust. So even though that section of Spring Hill Road was upgraded and sealed due to this complaint, the remaining internal access on Lot 305 and the to be constructed access from lots 2, 4 and 5 are all unsealed. The complaint referenced that the most dust was being raised from the portion of the road where it goes from being sealed to unsealed. What's most interesting is that this landowner is the same landowner who sold the wetland area and Parkfield drain component of that property to DBCA for inclusion in the Leschenault Regional Park. We also discovered that Catalano, as part of a noise and dust management strategy when that pit was first approved, was required to plant trees in order to screen from dust and noise. What we have here then, especially considering the scale of the MGM application compared to Catalano's, is an inconsistent and flawed application of prevention strategies when applied to this proposal. There was a further question asked, and forgive me for not remembering which councillor asked it, but it was about whether any complaints had been received about other active limestone quarries in the Shire. Mr Hall again spoke to that and said that there hadn't, but I wanted to draw your attention to this one point. If you look at the location of the other pits in the Shire, you'll find they are on isolated rural properties away from residential areas. And where they're not, they are screened from residential areas by large natural environmental buffers. Councillor Beach asked if any members of our community had approached the Rogers family regarding the proposal. The answer is that we have, and again, in the interest of transparency, I want to explain our reasons for doing so. Firstly, it's neither inappropriate, nor unethical, nor unlawful for us to do so. Clearly, MGM have approached and spoken with the Rogers family. In our view, the Rogers family are community members who we respect regardless of whether they agree with our viewpoint or not. It's not difficult to have an adult conversation and express opinions in a polite manner. A member of our committee engaged with Mr. Rogers and they had a meaningful conversation without us attempting to project, threaten or entice our views upon them. Our committee member expressed our concerns, particularly with regards to the heritage value of their property, as we believe as a community, given its heritage value, that it should be protected. We expressed to them concerns about ground vibration and its effect on the structure of the house. Mr. Rogers, in return, expressed he was happy with the situation and we considered the matter resolved. Prior to this conversation, we tried to contact the family by phone due to some information we received. It's a small community out there and everyone knows someone. A member of our community approached the committee to advise that she had a mutual friend who knew Mrs. Rogers and that they had spoken about the pit. Mrs. Rogers is an elderly lady and expressed to this friend that when she signed the consent form provided to the Shire, she did not fully understand what she was signing. Now, although we know that that conversation is hearsay and we don't impugn any impropriety on anyone's behalf, it was actionable information both for the community and the Shire to determine, in the interest of transparency, whether both Mrs. Rogers and her son understood the nature of their consent. We tried initially to contact them remotely, however that was unsuccessful and therefore necessitated a personal visit. There was a question posed in regards to the compulsory acquisition of land in order for the government to obtain sufficient resources to adequately build the Bunbury Outer Ring Road. Mr. Hall suggested that Main Roads had the ability to do so should this proposal be voted down. Now we accept that that's correct. We don't contend that Mr. Hall was incorrect, but we have gone and spoken with relative authorities at Main Roads and advised them of this proposal. The response we received, in a somewhat bemused manner, I guess, was, this isn't China and it isn't the castle. We also researched planning documents and found some interesting things. What I have here is a document produced by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage and the West Australian Planning Commission. It's called the Strategic Minerals and Basic Raw Materials Resource Policy for the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme, dated October 2018. Basic raw materials include things like sand and limestone. The last page of the map has a document of the Greater Bunbury Region Scheme with a map showing areas that planning policy has decided are available for the mining of minerals and basic raw materials. So I've blown that up a bit and I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. Here's Myla with a great big blue blob indicating planning approval for limestone extraction. Here's Binningup. This is Binningup Road. I appreciate this might be difficult to see where you are, but there's no big blue blob over Binningup or anywhere this proposal seeks to quarry limestone. Here's Binningup Road. Here are lots 305, 2, 4 and 5. No blue should mean no limestone. The other document I found came in conjunction with that planning document. This is the Basic Raw Materials Guide, also dated October 2018. Flipping in a few pages is Checklist 1. Checklist 1 is a tick and flip about site selection criteria. Here's the ones I found most interesting. The site is not in a floodplain or has a high groundwater table. You've heard our position on that, based on scientific evidence about that location being an alluvial plain, prone to flooding, and unable to be rehabilitated to a sufficient standard so as not to cause great impact on the water table. Point 2. The timeframe of the proposed activity considers the long-term impact on local communities and future land use within the vicinity. You've heard our position on that. Do we really believe that after 5 years that MGM will not be granted another 5 years? Should the golf course estate be developed further, Spring Hill Road is our secondary escape route that this proposal directly impinges upon in contravention of your own emergency management plans. The site does not contain any heritage, whether Aboriginal or European. You've heard our position on that as it relates to the Rogers household. The proposed activity will not cause disturbance to the amenity of the area. I think we've probably done that ad nauseum. The site is not in a visually significant location or visible from major roads and will not have a negative visual impact on major roads, scenic areas or adjoining properties. You've heard our position on that. The site provides adequate separation distances. You've heard our position on that. Operational issues such as hours of operation, noise and dust monitoring and site access are addressed with a view to minimising any potential issues for surrounding sites. You've certainly heard our position on that. I found it an interesting read, and when viewed with the information that you've been provided by our community, this proposal and assessment clearly doesn't cut the mustard in terms of an appropriate location or preventative measures. A couple of other things we found out. The limestone extracted from the pit is destined to be road-based for the Bunbury Outer Ring Road. I don't think anyone denies that. But we've heard that the Shire can use recycled waste landfill from the tip as an adjunct to using limestone for road base. So why don't we progress that further? The other information we discovered was under Section 19 of the WA Mining Act. I spoke last week about the fact that Carboni Brothers has a 130-acre pit already up in Mile Up, capable of producing 1.5 million cubic metres of limestone. What Section 19 stipulates is that Carboni Brothers are required to pay a stumpage royalty fee per cubic metre from that pit, which is why Carboni and MGM want to come to bidding up onto private land. It would mean they no longer have to pay those fees and they can maximise their potential profit. It isn't about accessing limited source material for the bore, it's about greed. This proposal provides no jobs, no gain, and no benefit to either the town of Binningup or the Shire of Harvey. So we ask you to make an ethical decision. Many councillors last week had concerns about whether voting this proposal down would send the matter to the SAT and therefore cost the Shire money. Look at the crowd here tonight. With all due respect to them, most of them have been paying rates for over 40 years. I think they consider that money well spent. This is a proposal and assessment based on opinion and a computer-based risk assessment based on incomplete data. The assessment is not grounded in science because the science hasn't been sought. We believe that the SAT, at the very least, would require further assessment or require greater preventative measures be imposed in the management plans that have been provided to council. So it's our position that there are two options. Vote no and let it go to the SAT. We will support that and we will remember who supported us. But there's another option. You can opt for the scientific approach and you can opt to bypass the SAT completely. You can refer this proposal to the Department of Environment and the EPA for environmental assessment based on the grounds we've given you. Particularly because if the EPA determines this proposal is not environmentally sound, it can't go to the SAT. The SAT can only determine planning considerations and not environmental assessments. So in conclusion, we ask again that you represent us with your vote tonight and please consider your conscience and make an ethical decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. Question, Councillor Beach.
Not to speak. It's not to the speaker, it's a comment, the very last comment that you made, and I'm wondering whether Mr. Hawke can provide a commentary on it. This proposal can be referred to the EPA.
Look, any proposal can be referred to the applicant if you wish, but there are no contemporary at the moment for water, so they might call in and have a different opinion on it. It could be if you wish.
Okay, no more questions. Thanks, Gareth.
Thank you all.
Kristen. Welcome.
Hi councillors, my name is Kirsty Neal Thompson, I'm from the Senate. How you're going? Look, thank you for the opportunity to provide this deputation on behalf of the applicant, who is Tiachi Family Trust. The purpose of this deputation is just to provide some further context regarding the project, particularly in relation to perceived community issues. By way of background, and I think everyone's well and truly familiar with this proposal, it's proposed to extract limestone from the 26-hectare area located at Block 4 Vineyard Road. So the application is made for a 5-year period. However, excavation will occur as quickly as possible, noting that the resource is obviously proposed to be used for the bumping out ring road. This approach will ensure that the extraction area is returned to pasture as soon as possible. As previously mentioned, access to the subject site will be via the sealed spring road only. No vehicles, trucks, or machinery will utilise the Vineyard Road. A really important consideration of this project is that the material within the application area has been assessed as being of high-grade limestone, which complies with main road specifications for road construction. In fact, main roads are already out there today inspecting and validating the material used in the project. To provide some context around resource availability within the region, an interagency committee, which was led by the Department of Mines, actually identified a shortage of building materials within this region. The dependent supply of these materials is crucial for construction and building involved with development. Transporting these materials from distant sources significantly increases costs for housing and road development projects. Over the past 10 years, the Department of Mines have undertaken a detailed scoping exercise to identify additional sources of limestone material. And this has resulted in the development of 2 mining tenements within the state forest in Wala. This exercise was actually a state first, it had never been undertaken before, and it required years of work by the Department of Mines. I've actually been involved with these tenements and the processes, so I'm familiar with what's required and the work that has gone behind the scenes. I can confirm that these mining tenements, including the Compulsory site, are only likely to be operational within the next 3 to 5 years, and that's because of the process that they need to go through. Furthermore, some preliminary testing of this limestone material actually indicates that it may not be suitable for road construction projects. My point is there are actually significant limitations regarding limestone resource availability within the region. If the material was readily available elsewhere, the applicant would certainly pursue these alternatives rather than pursuing what for, given the significant costs associated with this project. So to provide a very brief overview of some of the key issues associated with the project, I provide the following. There will be no impacts to flora and vegetation as a result of the proposal. The site is completely cleared. The road has already been established. There are no fauna corridors that will be intersected by this road. The applicant has worked very closely with the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation to meet the requirements relating to groundwater management for this project. There's been a lot of behind-the-scenes work undertaken with Brendan Kelly from the Department of Water. The applicant has implemented all of DWR's recommendations, which has resulted in a conservative maximum depth of excavation at 1.5 metres. Furthermore, groundwater monitoring laws, a series of groundwater monitoring laws have been installed across the site. The applicant is undertaking groundwater monitoring and will continue to do so for the life of the project. There will be no interaction with groundwater whatsoever, and DWR are comfortable with this. Again, the applicant has worked very closely with DWR to meet their requirements regarding surface water management. This has entailed there being a setback from the pipe for agricultural grain and the installation of drains and holding ponds, which they are satisfied with. DWR is satisfied that this land can be successfully returned to pasture and hence the separation to groundwater. It is worth noting that there are no setback requirements for existing agricultural practices to pipe for drain. These practices obviously utilise the nutrients and chemical application. This form of extraction is one of the few allowable land uses in a priority one drinking water area. And this is because there is no chemical use in this application. In relation to noise emissions, an acoustic assessment has been undertaken by independent experts for the proposed operation. This has been undertaken in consideration of worst case meteorological conditions. With the proposed mitigation measures, there will be no exceedances of the noise regulations for the residents of Bingham. Only for certain stages, minor exceedances in the order of 1 to 2 decibels will occur in the worst case meteorological conditions at the Rogers residence. On this basis, special management measures, including funds and restricting times when topsoil can be removed, will be implemented to avoid these exceedances. For dust emissions, excavation of the limestone itself is not a significant source of dust. And this is given the typically moist nature of the limestone material. Further crushing and screening of the limestone does not generally produce significant dust because the limestone remains moist. Furthermore, spray bars will be utilised on any crushing and screening plant. The removal and replacement of topsoil material has the highest risk associated with dust generation. Accordingly, the dust management plan has been designed to ameliorate these risks as far as possible by providing limiting conditions as when the topsoil can actually be removed. So this includes consideration of wind speed and wind direction. It's important to note that there's approximately 140 hectares of horticultural land immediately to the east, north and south of the extraction area. Remembering that the total area of exposed ground within the extraction area will not exceed 4 hectares. This 140 hectare area is under frequent rotation, resulting in large areas of exposed soils. There are no dust management measures associated with these farming practices. To provide some context regarding the siting of other quarries within the region, I'd like to provide the following. Firstly, Bingham Township is located approximately 680 metres from the westernmost extent of the extraction area. This is compliant with the EPA guidelines for separation distances. Within the Shire of Cable, a limestone quarry is located approximately 200 metres from a high-density residential area at lots 2 and 3 Bingham Road, Stratton. There's also the Holson and Jalora hard rock quarries. They involve blasting and drilling. They're located approximately 500 metres from residential estates. There's many quarries that I could bring up, which are located in close proximity to neighbouring residents. In relation to silica, non-occupational exposure occurs naturally due to wind erosion. Farming, construction and demolition activities also contribute to the environmental exposure of crystalline silica. However, exposure to the respirable fraction of silica, which is an important component relating to health impacts, occurs mainly in an industrial setting with continuous and extended periods of exposure. This is supported by a study in California regarding non-occupational exposure to respirable silica from quarries, whereby there was no reported cases of silica-related diseases. So look, this concludes my deputation, and now I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Councillor Adams.
Can you hear me? No, listening? You put great emphasis on the quality of the limestone from this proposed quarry. How does that line up with the fact that the main roads are lined up as much road base, if you like, call it, from very well known one tip site that they bought anything that they can get hold of, crushed bricks and whatever. How does that line up with such an emphasis on quality when they're prepared to use stuffing, tips and that sort of thing, which is obviously going to be very high quality?
I can't comment on the tip that you're referring to. I'm not sure what material you're really referring to there, but there are certain specifications that are required in relation to limestone quality for road construction works. The limestone material itself can be used for a number of materials. It can be used for farming practices, it can be used to create limestone blocks. There's a number of uses, but in relation to road construction, there certainly are specifications which you need to meet.
Well, I'm sure the stuff in the corridor, maybe.
I can't remember the stuff before I get it.
Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to the area, can you confirm whether there will be any blasting happening in the site?
No blasting.
Okay. And also with regard to, at the moment, the mining industry in particular, diesel particulates being airborne across the residential areas of large concern. Diesel particulates are a current hot topic within both open pit and underground mining. Can you confirm if you've taken any action regarding those?
Machinery will be used, not dissimilar to any of the farming practices where the tractors utilise and the trucks nearby the properties. So standard diesel equipment will be used. It's all modern. The equipment itself is fairly new. I'm aware of the noise assessment we had to put the specifications of the equipment. So it is very new equipment, and I'm assuming that it's compliant with the regulations of the industry. Any further questions?
Councillor Bromley, deep in thought.
Yes, President. The actual report you put together, how much of that was actually conducted on the ground? How much of it was conducted through desktop studies?
This is why the plans.
So
we have to take a site visit. So for the noise assessment, that undertakes a site visit. There's a component of dust assessment, and there's a desktop assessment, and there's also obviously an on-the-ground assessment as well.
Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wanting to know what dust monitoring you will be doing, and particularly outside the hours of operation inside.
So the dust management plan that has been developed requires the operator to undertake visual monitoring at all times during operation. If there's any particular exceedances, there might be a requirement to undertake off-site dust monitoring. The issue with dust monitoring is that, like I mentioned before, there's 140 hectares of horticultural land surrounding this area. It'd be very difficult to pinpoint that the dust actually comes from that operation. So what we've tried to do is develop a management plan to ensure that the dust impacts are limited as far as possible. Like I mentioned, it's actually the removal of the topsoil material which is most likely to result in potential dust emissions. So specific management measures have been developed there, which actually looks at wind speed, wind direction, and various things in terms of when you can actually remove that material.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back, councillors. Item 9, announcements by presiding member or CEO without discussion is nil. Item 10, confirmation of minutes. Ordinary council meeting Tuesday, 28th of July 2020. We have a mover, Councillor Adams, second, Councillor Boylan. Any questions? I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. Shire of Harvey Bushfire Advisory Committee on the 17th of August 2020. Mover, Councillor Coleman, second, Councillor Burgoyne. Any questions? Any discussions? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12, officers' reports. Chief Executive Officer, 12.1.1, Council Decision Action List. We have a recommendation on page 11. Move, Councillor Simpson. Second, Councillor Bromham. Any questions? Queries? I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.1.2, Corporate Business Plan. What's the recommendation? We have move, Councillor Adams. Second, query? Councillor Coleman, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to get a slight adjustment on page 67. The shelter for the electric charger will be in Hayward Street, not Harper Street. That's all.
Yes. Thank you. Councillor Coleman will deal with that administratively and make that change.
Sure, thank you. Happy to second it.
Okay. It was moved, Councillor Adams. Second, Councillor Coleman. No more questions. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 12-0, absolute majority. Item 12.1.3, communication strategy. We have an officer recommendation on page 18. We have 3 councillors that have been... I'm on the wrong page. Everyone's looking at me funny. Okay. We have 3 councillors that have put their name forward. Is there a... We have Councillor Bromham, Councillor Lovett and myself. Is there a stipulation on numbers?
No, there's not. The recommendation was for 2 councillors to be part of that working group, but happy for 3 to be present if that's the wish.
Okay. Move, Councillor Campbell. Second, Councillor Coleman. Any questions, any queries? I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Love it. Yeah. Infrastructure Services, 12.2.1, Proposed Regional Road Group Improvement and Expansion Projects. A recommendation on page 25. Councillor Bromham, Councillor Cavoni, second. Any queries, any questions? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.2.2, bidding up community garden proposal. Councillor Lovett moving, Councillor Campbell second. Any recommendation on page 28? Is there any questions, any queries? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.1. I'll ask the 2 councillors to... Item 12.3.1, application for development approval and extractive industry licence application, limestone extraction. I wish to move an alternative motion. Stand up there, I think. that Council 1 refuses the application for development approval for the extraction of limestone from the nominated area within Lot 4, Binningup Road, Binningup, as the proposed management plans are not considered adequate to manage likely offset impacts to protect the current amenity of residents within the Binningup town site. And 2, that it be referred to the EPA. Second, Councillor Adams. The facts presented to Council in the past 2 weeks, and from the information I have read, I believe that the proponents' management plans cannot adequately achieve the conditions set out in the recommendation. Therefore, it is appropriate to refuse this item. There is likely to be off-site impacts that will negatively affect the livability and amenity of the Binningup community. I would also like to note that other than the Rogers family, the nearest landowner is the Shire of Harvey, with community facilities situated on the land 680 metres away. Given that the planned end use of the quarry is to restore it to a natural soil profile, there are concerns on how this can be achieved when more than 260,000 tonnes of subsoil material have been removed. The proposed limestone extraction area has raised too many environmental concerns, including regarding the alluvial Yalgarup floodplains and the geomorphic wetlands, the disturbance impact to hydrological function, and the future impact on the broader Leschenault Regional Park. Councillor Adams, do you wish to speak?
The only thing I wish to add to that, Mr. President, is that I agree that this proposed pit is inappropriately or intended to be inappropriately located.
Thank you.
Do we have a speaker against the motion? Speak, Councillor Bronwyn.
First of all, I'd like to bring forward their information. I think it was a very interesting presentation tonight. Most of those things on board. Through you, Mr. President. I would like to outline my reasons for supporting the staff recommendation. In considering the matter, I was aware of the need to act in an impartial and objective manner that provided equity and fairness to both the community and the proposal. I noted that this matter did not necessarily have to come to council and that it was within the officer's scope or responsibility to determine the matter. To their credit, they presented this item to council to ensure due diligence, both for the community and for the proposal limestone quarry. The concerns raised by the community were then assessed by CEDO, our professional staff, who then assessed the proposal against its requirements and the Shire's planning scheme. And its planning scheme really drives my thoughts tonight. Community concerns of proximity, where a quarry has a distance of between 300 and 500 metres is allowable in most areas of the Brisbane. There are some quarries, mainly in Untitled Chapter, that are within those. Noise funds were prepared by the proponent to overcome the problems in relation to noise travelling from the quarry towards the urban areas, to the north, to the west, and these would also alleviate some of the issues mentioned for amenity. And the good part would basically like the runs along the road near Limestone and Australia, and if I can cover the trees and things like that, which covers that particular area, and also provides, interestingly enough, some habitat for wildlife. The water table, I actually talked to members of the LCC myself because I wanted to make sure that we were covering that area. And I was informed by them as far as I'm concerned, there's no issue with the water table, and that the area of the pine forest and the land there has become quite acidic, and that the quarry might even actually assist us in improving our water quality. Yeah, that's what they told me. Vibration in regards to the heritage building at Springdale Homestead could be managed by low speeds or visualising the road. Dust. Now, dust was an interesting one because I was very concerned about dust myself in relation not so much cleaning up but to federal property. So I did some research on that myself, and I found that I believe there would be need to monitor dust in the area. But I think that can be managed. Environmentally, there are benefits too. In that having a quarry close to the proximity of where the material is being used would reduce the amount of traffic, heavy vehicle traffic on West Australian roads, and therefore make it safer for the public to transport on those roads. And I guess you guys would use those roads all the time. Each of these concerns were addressed, and the appropriate planning data used to determine the possibility of the concern or hazards being reduced to a level that met legislative standards. In all cases, this is proven to be the case. Mr. President, I would now like to just address my role as a councillor in the process. I attended the meeting at Benningup and listened to the community concerns. I acted as a conduit and passed information on to the staff from members of the community. I sent an email to staff expressing my concerns in relation to Springfield Homestead, and I discussed the matter with members of the National Council. On this matter, as a councillor, I have a quasi-judicial responsibility when making decisions. So what does this mean? In simple terms, it means I must apply the legislative rules as they apply at the time of the proposal. There are good reasons for quasi-judicial responsibility. The process we follow gives certainty to individuals, communities and businesses when purchasing a property or running a business. The proposal under these conditions relates to the legal right of a proposer to carry out their business on land zoned for the purpose under land standard. Given that the concerns of the community, including all hazards identified, can be controlled to within prescribed standards, as they stand at the moment. For the said industry, we have no just grounds to refuse the development of the quarry as proposed. I believe that voting against the officer's recommendation only provides those against the quarry with a full cycle, as the statement of the Child SAC is tied to the same legal and ethical constraints as council. I also believe there would be a cost to all ratepayers in the Shire. So we talk about 28,000 people who live in the Shire now, and a large percentage of them would be ratepayers if this proceeded to SAC with no net benefit if we lost the agreement. It would also indicate to the state government that this council was unable to apply its own planning scheme in an impartial manner that met the test of judicial fairness. I therefore ask that the councillors do not vote for the proposal. However, I do think the NPA side of it worth pursuing.
Is there a speaker for the motion? Oh, question? Councillor Campbell?
Just the second part of your motion regarding the NPA. Can that just be explained to me? Because I thought Mr. Hall said that there was no trigger for us to forward that to the NPA. So can I just have that explained to me?
Through Mr. Chairman, during the assessment process, there hasn't been the normal triggers to warrant the proposal being referred to the EPA as part of the assessment. If the council would like to refer to the EPA, there is no impediment to doing so. Yeah, I've got a bit of a problem with the second part of the recommendation as well. If the first part of the recommendation is actually refusal, then you don't actually have anything to refer to the EPA. So any referral to the EPA would need to result in a deferral of the consideration of the application and for way for that process. I'm trying to find a matter as to whether or not it's within the gamut of the tribunal should end up there if they can set their decision aside and wait for a determination from the EPA. I'm confident they can. We have referred applications to other levels of government for professional advice on things. So I don't see it's outside the realm of possibility that through any possible challenge to the tribunal, the referral to the EPA could be part of that process. It would be more appropriate in that case than having a recommendation that's almost a moot point after the first.
So based on that, Mr. Hall, you remain standing. Based on that, I think the will of the community that we're being asked to do to represent them, that if it's referred to the EPA first, and then it will come back to council.
Mr. Chair, that question should probably be asked of the council in terms of what they think should occur with the application. The community and the applicant make a decision. A decision of refusal has the ability to respond to the concerns. I think you've summed it up quite well. There's concerns about the capacity of management plans to protect the meaning of getting. There's that other risk that if you refer to the EPA and our expectations are correct, that there aren't any triggers. If they say no, then that places the recommendation for refusal at risk.
So with the approval of the seconder, do you wish to remove part 2?
Yeah, I've got I've got the argument, I think. I can't get away from the fact that it's simply it's simply in the wrong place and inappropriate for this location. Who we would refer it to can't get away from that point, and that's my main argument. Refer to staff, refer to the EPA, refer to whoever you like. It's still in the wrong place.
Were you happy to remove point 2?
If you are.
Yep. Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, I'm very much in favour of your motion, and I commend our community, our local community, for being passionate and presenting so forcefully to us in a nice way and respectfully. I'd also like to thank our staff because they are charged with bringing to us all of the possibilities, whether they like it or not. That's their job. They have to bring to us some very difficult decisions, some difficult legal precedents, some difficult legal points. They have to bring us all the notifications that we're not qualified to know about, and we can't be. These guys are specialists, and I think we've got the best.
So I'd like to commend them because they've done an awful lot of work under very difficult circumstances, as our community have in being informed. And I very much am in favour of refusing the application for development. Thank you.
Any other speakers against the motion? Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. President. Firstly, before I do speak, I'll foreshadow a motion if this one that talking about now doesn't get up. And that foreshadow motion would be that the development application lays on the table and refer to the EPA for whatever the EPA do. Mr. President, we're on a hiding tonight. We'll be down here again, we'll be down here again. I've read the literature and I've listened to the impassioned pleas of the people from Vinegar, and I understand where they're coming from. I've also been out to the site. I went out there on Sunday morning and I was walking up to someone that took me to the actual site. I then toured Valentine Road, Lakes Parade, Tuscany, Court, I think it is, to have a look for myself. The applicant is providing management plans to address the majority of the issues that have been raised, and if the applicant chooses not to operate within the parameters of those plans and conditions, then there will be consequences. And Mr. Wall has already said that we are not against taking on executive license holders and taking them to task. It has happened in the past. I have quite a few other notes, but they have been adequately covered, so I will miss out on those. The resource bidding has been required by the state. Let's make no mistake. It is for the greater good. For the greater good. Whatever we decide tonight, the state will get that resource, whether it's through our support, whether it's through the staff, or by main roads and Compulsory economy under their act. We all enjoy driving on state-of-the-art main arterial roads. The Forest Highway is a prime example of that. And we cannot do that without good foundations such as found at the whole site. We heard from MGM that there are very few places where quality limestone from road-based exists. This happens to be one of them. If we roll this down tonight and you go to staff, I'll remind council of the cost of the ratepayers that will be incurred. I led the charge against a proposal up on the Rollins Hill. That went to SAP. It cost this council, the ratepayers, I should say, rather than the council, a considerable amount of money. And the SAP overruled us. Not only did they do that, they quarantined part of an adjacent landowner's land by putting a buffer zone over it. If you wanted to put a house there, the buffer zone was there. That was not allowed under the SAP rulings. SAP are very powerful. And they will have to treat this on the same matters that we treat it, that is, on planning terms alone. Emotions don't come into it. I had correspondence from a person who highlighted that we were elected to represent the district. And that's written down in the Act. I'm well aware of that section of the Act, and that's what I think I'm doing tonight, representing the whole district, not just one section. There will always be people who are disenfranchised by our decisions. Now, I don't miss the concerns of Vinegar residents, and I accept they are free to make their opinions known as strong as they believe necessary. But to ask me and council to vote on conscience is not possible. We make decisions on planning issues, not that it will cost us votes at the next election. The common argument has been that 700 metres is too close. The EPA, from what I can read, is saying an adequate buffer of 500 metres is what is required. None of the residents, none of the visitations we've had have actually said what they believe is an adequate distance, but 700 metres or 680 metres is not ideal, but what is burning issues of the day. There is nothing in the reports that say to me that the application is not compliant with all relevant legislation, and that the setback of 650 metres or 680 metres is 30% more than is required, than the required 500 metres. So just on planning grounds alone, I will vote against the current motion that could address the shadow motion so far.
Any other speakers for Councillor Boylan?
I'd really like to thank the community to start, and I loved hearing everything that you have to say, and I listen very carefully to your concerns. At the outset, let me say I'm a strong supporter of local jobs and the local businesses which sustain and create them. Mining and extractive industries are an important part of our regional economic mix, and they continue to be for some time into the future. In the 3 years I've been a member on this council, I have been consistently supportive of our local mining industry and extractive industry licences. My husband's employed in the mining industry in our northwest, and countless numbers of our family and people I know in our community are either employed by this critical industry directly or through the many local small businesses which support them, a number of which are based here on our doorstep. I expect many in this room, including those in the gallery, are in the same boat. My position for this motion has nothing to do with my broad support for the critical local industry. It has everything to do with a balance not have been met as presented in this new motion. I do not believe in this case it is in the best interest of the local community. I have reviewed the facts, I have read the briefing papers, and I have listened to the community. From this, I continue to hold two major concerns. Firstly, the concern of the community has been clear. I have read through the summary of submissions made to Council by the Bedding community. Families who live in the community where this project will be developed and operating and have invested in their local town and have seen their community grow. And having read through their correspondence, which represented every point of view possible, I do not believe the primary concerns have received an adequate response, concerns which I share. In addition to this, the briefing documents note on several occasions that Council has required the applicant to review the risk assessment. I have not yet seen this updated document. This is a critical part of a project of this nature and an integral piece of the decision-making process. With the sensitivities around this project, particularly its proximity to the local homes, it is also my view that the management plan fails to provide the community with adequate assurance that robust standards, controls, and commitments by the applicant in relation to environmental factors, namely dust and noise, will be kept within the required levels. Let me be clear, this is not another case of not in my backyard. This has nothing to do with not supporting local industry. There are valid concerns with this project and its impact on the community, which I do not believe are in the community's best interests. That's why I will support this motion.
We have another speaker against the motion. Speaker for, Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I definitely want to thank the community for coming out to share your concerns, and we have listened to them, and that's something that you can guarantee every councillor has done. My concerns about this project are based purely on science. I come from a mining town and a mining heritage. When you move to a mining area, you choose to go to live next to a mine or a pit. This is cart before the horse. You have chosen to live there, and then you're being presented with a pit on the doorstep. The only similar issue has been all the many years ago where they took out old mining areas and created a pit. The dust from limestone is cellular. It's one of the hottest areas that works are currently dealing with in WA is silicosis. It's a disease that we thought we got rid of 100 years ago in the mining industry, and it's exactly the vengeance. The current proposal we know doesn't include blasting. However, it's reasonable to assume that at some point in time, if there is an expansion, and that will come to us to approve an expansion, that there could be blasting. I have consulted with a person who is a fellow of the Australian Institute of Mining Engineering and Metallurgy. The blasting from limestone, because limestone is a moist rock, produces fumes. In those fumes, the main ones are nitrates, which has an adverse effect on lung health, and alum, which produces skin allergies. They're not things that we want being produced in this area. I queried earlier regarding diesel particulates. Again, at the moment it's a hot topic in the mining industry because the diesel particulates are causing issues for local people. Obviously, the heritage issues and responsibility to the community itself, and I support this motion.
Anyone else against the motion? Speak against the motion. Anyone for? Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to speak for the motion that you proposed. I'm familiar with the area. I actually from a family that has farmed lilac strip for many years, so I'm fully aware of the issues of dust. The proponent mentioned that there's a lot of dust already created from the agricultural sector. Yes, there is, and they have problems monitoring it and suppressing it. So I don't think that we should add to that by having a limestone quarry there as well. I don't think that the proposed management regime is adequate, and I don't think it will safeguard the surrounding environment of Mitigation or Springfield residents. I have grave concerns for the impact on Parkfield Drain and also the National Inlet. Because of the farming background that I have, I am aware of the water table of that area, and that is also another concern, the impact on that. So I support the proposed motion.
Unless anyone else has a burning desire, I'll probably sum up. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me preface my remarks with acknowledging the concerns of the community and the passion shown by the Mitigation community today. Today, councillors, we have to make a very difficult decision, either to support this extractive industry application based on planning grounds, or to refuse it based on the community's concerns. Councillors, I believe to attempt to shape and decide a planning issue on non-planning grounds is simply going to cost the ratepayer, as it will go to SAT at the moment, according to this motion. And I would love to be standing here today supporting the Mitigation community, but I place more weight on my decision today to be upfront and honest with the community and not to prolong the inevitable outcome. The proponent has comprehensive plans to address the management issues around dust, noise and amenity, and they are required to do like any other extractive industry application. They are required to meet those conditions that are outlined. And there is a complaints mechanism in place so that the proponent is to address those complaints in a timely manner. So based around planning grounds, I do not support this motion. However, I will give consideration to Councillor Beech's motion regarding forwarding to the MPA.
While I appreciate on planning grounds that we have been there, it is still my understanding that the livability and the amenity of the Binning Up community cannot be addressed adequately with the plans that have been put forward, the proposed management plans. We have heard about silica. This is something that has not been addressed and cannot be addressed. I'm a farmer by trade, and when Roundup came out, it was that safe you could drink it. Now that's some 40 years ago, and look where we are now. If we want to look forward 40 years in planning, then well and good. The fact is, the Shire of Harvey has its own community facilities within 680 metres of this proposed pit. It would be wrong of me not to give due consideration not only to the livability but the health concerns of future generations while I'm off into the sunset somewhere else. I have a responsibility, regardless of planning grounds. I believe this cannot be achieved, and I urge everyone to vote for it. Thank you. I'll now put the motion. Is there anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 7-3. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, an alternative motion was moved that Council 1 refuses the application for development approval for the extraction of limestone from the nominated area within Lot 4 Binning Up Road, Binning Up, as the proposed management plans are not considered adequate to manage likely offset impacts to protect the current amenity of residents within the Binning Up town site. It was carried 7-3. Okay, item 12.3.3, request for road naming. Skip one of it. Sorry. Skipping one here. Yeah, community wish to lead. Okay, item 12.3.2, structure plan amendment number 2, Treendale South. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to propose an alternative motion that has been handed over details. Basically, it is to approve the acoustic wall in favour of the earth fund.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Brom? Councillor Beach.
Just simply, Mr. President, I think the proposed acoustic wall achieves the stated purpose. The noise control and the visual impacts from Forest Highway. Doesn't appear to be any technical deficiencies with it. There's lots of these limestone walls along the highway, and I do believe that perhaps in some places it's far too many. And this end, the southern end, I think it's far too many earth panels as well. So I think a mixture of both would probably work quite well. And I believe this short argument last Tuesday. By sound, I can't see any reason why we shouldn't support this.
Seconder, wish to speak at all? Councillor Bromham?
Mr. President, I just think it's always a much better idea from a fire prevention point of view. Farms are usually covered with growth, and when fire moves up, you get any pretty twice as fast as goes on flat ground. When it hits the top, it usually picks up so that they're traded off as debris. That's going to get exploded, so I think more is much better.
Any speaker against the motion?
Can I just get a clear reason?
Clear reason?
Yes.
Councillor Beach?
Just for the minutes, Councillor Beach.
On the reason. The reason being is that I believe that the acoustic wall achieves its stated purpose.
Okay.
Clarification on
The Councillor Beach was proposing that the concrete proposal instead of the earth bund, the concrete acoustic wall.
And that was subject to main roads requirements too.
Yep.
As a road up there, yeah, okay.
Oh, that's what you want up there.
Simon, did you wish to clarify? You haven't had much to say today.
Through the chair. Through the chair, the motion on board actually retains on page 60 the officer's recommendation on 1 as written. 2 seeks to replace the schedule modifications with the schedule modification on the board, which is effectively allowing for the bund wall to be considered. And the officer's report actually makes reference to some of the comments from Harvey, which is if the wall is the preferred outcome, the outcome of the council, there's some additional information that's going to be provided. So it's simply seeking additional information before referring to the WA.
All happy? Okay. Well, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, now we're on to item 12.3.3. Request for road naming. We have an officer recommendation on page 65. Councillor Burgoyne moving. Councillor Campbell second. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Corporate Services, item 12.4.1. Listing of accounts paid June 2020. And the officer recommendation is on page 67. Moved Councillor Simpson, second Councillor Burgoyne. Any questions, any queries? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.2, financial statements as at 30th of June 2020. There's a recommendation on page 69. Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Campbell, second. Is there any queries, any questions? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.3, write-off of sundry debtors. There's a recommendation on page 71. Councillor Adams, question?
Question?
Yes.
And I think I might have asked a question before. Do I need that? No. I'll take it first, right? Between the removal of abandoned vehicles and the probably have with live inputs now returned, what sort of deal from the basis, roughly?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. So most of these accounts are around about the $300 mark. Most of these vehicles we also issued a $200 in litter infringement. So you're talking roughly $150 per vehicle. So over the course of the year, you'll be talking roughly about $5,000.
Including library books? Sorry? Library books, we also come up with library books, haven't we?
Yes, in relation to the library books, some of those accounts don't come here because of the size of them. We do have two budget allocations of, I think, total of about $5,000 or $6,000 for the replacement of the books. Of that, you might be talking $1,000 worth of those that would normally come here, 1,000 to 3,000, something like that. I could get, with time, I could give those figures, but roughly they're the sort of figures you're talking, combined less than 10,000.
Thank you.
No, Councillor Lovett. Councillor Bronwyn, second. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.4.4, request for rates exemption. We have officer recommendation on page 73. Councillor Adams.
Recommendation I would put forward, yes.
We have a seconder. Councillor Dickinson.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, question. Councillor Birch.
Yeah, the briefing session last week, you know that this is a one-off, or one, you only need to make one application and then it is up to the corporation to advise that there was a change. Now, I seem to remember some time ago, we moved that the people, charitable organisations need to apply every year because they may have failed to tell us that there's been a change in their circumstances, and the rate books are showing that they are a charitable service. What checks and balances do we have if this is the case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of the assessments that we have that fall within this category still provide us a letter annually saying that they want to continue having the exemption. The fallback that we do have, though, is that if the property sells, at that change of ownership, it highlights the staff to actually rectify or change the use. There is no requirement really for council to go through this process annually, so we take it upon ourselves as staff to ensure that we follow that through. And if there is a change, then we make that change without again bringing it back to council. Probably the one area that would be different to that is where there is a rebate per se if there's footpaths or the like that are going through private residents or subdivisions that are used by the public. And you'll notice bidding up, we have one that comes every year and we continue to have that coming in.
Thank you. No further questions. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried. Community and Lifestyle, item 12.5.1, Community Sporting and Recreation Facility Fund Grant Application. Councillor Beach. Move. Seconder. Councillor Coleman. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.5.2, Proposed Local Tourism Development Strategy. We have officer recommendation on page 81. Have received two nominations from councillors, Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Lovett. Are there any other Does anyone else have a burning desire or happy with that? Do we have a mover? Councillor Coleman. Do we have a second to Councillor Burgoyne? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.5.3, Youth Strategy. We have 3 nominations yet again. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Bromham and Councillor Gillard. I'm happy for you two to sit there and I can just come along and play cards afterwards. If you're two happy with that? Okay. Do we have a mover? Councillor Boylan, Councillor Campbell, second. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.5.4, Tourist Information Bays and Signage Strategy. We have on page 88 and 89, we have Councillor Coleman and Councillor Lovett.
You take a third. I wouldn't mind a dash at that.
Well, probably put you in the mix there, Councillor Adams.
Sure.
Okay. We're all happy with that. Have a move. Councillor Burgoyne, second. Councillor Campbell. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. Nil. Item 14, notice of motion for following meeting. Nil. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given. Is nil. Item 16, reports of members are in the big tin can. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that last night we had the first meeting of the Australian National Place Advisory Group, and the committee members are very, very enthusiastic, and I'm very excited about the contribution we're going to make to the Shire. So I think all those learners from down south in the Shire, and I'm sure they're doing some job.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Nothing like a bit of excitement. Councillor Adams.
Wednesday the 19th, last Wednesday in effect, I attended the National Catchment Council meeting as a proxy for Councillor Dickinson. Quite a bit of business, and I won't go into detail. I've met for 4 months, so I had an awful lot to say. Interestingly enough, the Labour candidate for Collie attended the meeting and was given a rundown on National Catchment Council activities, which I thought might be of some interest. As I say, there's a whole lot of business. One of the things which concerned me, and has concerned me for some time, is that the National Catchment Council doesn't quite get the publicity, if you like, or recognition that it deserves from our council. I don't think we know most of us know a great deal about them. And I've tried to persuade them, and I think I have, to come up and address council and give us a rundown on the work that they do in the community. One of the things that they're quite proud of right now is their program addressing or as much employment, but an endeavour to give them opportunity to do various things in the, as far as the environment is concerned. Which raises another question, which I've asked before about cultural burden. I haven't had an answer to that yet. But anyway, yes, the OCC hopefully will come up and tell us what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I'm sure that's a burning question and we'll get that to you in due course. We'll pass that over to Mr Hall, I think. Okay, item 17, seal register. Councillor Burgoyne, Councillor Lovett. Any queries, any questions? Put the motion. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 18, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting. Neil? Item 19, matters behind closed doors, is Neil. Item 19.1, just like to welcome Courtney Williams to the Shire as Manager of Governance and Strategy. Also, happy birthday to Wendy for tomorrow, and belated happy birthday to Councillor Simpson for the 20th. Hope everyone had a good day and will have a good day. Thank you everyone for your attendance, and we will close the meeting at Councillor Adams.
My colleague restrained me from doing so earlier on in the piece, Mr. President, but I can't sit here and not respond to the suggestion that our integrity could be questioned by what somebody may or may not say. And I certainly put it on record that my decisions are made on me. I would love to think myself as my own man and I'll make my own decisions. And I greatly regret that any suggestion should be otherwise.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Okay, we'll close the meeting at 6:33 and thank everyone for their attendance.